Welcome to the Pause Awards show, where we invite past winners and future judges to talk about their journeys, inspirations, and lessons learned in their professional careers and beyond. My name is George Hedden, and I'm a founder of Pause Fest and Pause Awards. Pause Awards are celebrating business achievements of impactful businesses that ultimately go to build better ecosystems. And today, I'm speaking with our awards judge. I'm talking to Tom Leyden, Global Leader of IT, CIO at Woods Bagot. Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, very well, George. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you. Is this CIO, Chief Innovation Officer, or Chief Information Officer?
It's Chief Information Officer, so a bit old-fashioned, I guess, these days. But that's sort of the role that looks after all the IT across the Woods Bagot empire.
Yeah, you're still a chief.
That's what I tell myself. Yes.
Yeah. So we love talking to you, and thanks for coming back again this year to judge the awards. Maybe before I leap into some of the questions that I have had for you, what was it like last year? How did you enjoy some of the entries that we had?
Yeah, that was a fascinating process, George, and I really appreciate the invitation to be part of the judging panel. The entrants were just sort of huge array of different categories. I thought what was fascinating was that your pivot awards around how people have pivoted through that last few years was really, really interesting. Amazing stories that sort of emerged from the entrants. And it was really, really enjoyable to be part of that. A lot of work sifting through them all, of course, but I thought, great. What a great cause it was.
From my memory, you really wanted to read every single thing that was there. You didn't want to skip anything. You were very sort of detailed.
Well, for me, I mean, people put the time and effort into creating those entrants, right? So I think it's our duty as judges to make sure we read them and review them, really understand what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, thank you for that. You've had over 20 years of experience in the IT industry. How has that shifted? That's like almost 5 different industries ahead.
Well, I think where do you start with that question? So IT is now all pervasive, right? It's everything. It's everything we do. It's how we communicate. It's how we work these days. It's embedded in everything we touch. So it's all over the space. And now, unfortunately, it's a threat from a cybersecurity point of view as well. Organizations are, technology-led. Technology is not just a thing in the basement anymore. IT people at the top of the chain, they're leading organizational change. They're part of new business value, part of new business chains. So it's very exciting to be part of that, actually, and see that growth. Yes. What I personally like about it, though, is that everyone is doing IT, from my kids in primary school all the way through to people who are retired. They're all embracing what IT is about and looking at how they can improve the world.
Yeah, IT is, as you said, it's not something that you kind of the guys in a back room or basement are. You kind of like on a top now and making sure that everything is functioning. And it's not just in companies; it's homes as well, and everywhere is. So it's not just for commercial purposes.
No, exactly, and I think it's making a genuine difference to a lot of people's lives, right? It's helping people educate and learn faster and better, reaching out to people who hadn't had those services before. It's improving people's quality of life and health, and it's basically turning us into better communicators. I guess to an extent, but it's enabling us to really connect at a global level.
Yeah, and so you pretty much specialize in end-to-end IT services, from strategy, risk, asset, security, maturity, data, operations, and a whole lot of more. Which segment do you think had the most innovation lately?
Well, I think with the rise of consumer electronics has really changed everything, right? So I don't know, George, how old you are. Maybe you don't remember the first iPod and the iPhones and the iPads.
Yeah.
That's really, I guess that's really changed the way people have thought about how to consume electronics and information technology. And then those platforms, those tools have enabled full platforms, right? And then behind that, the internet, the development of the internet itself. So the ability for, I guess, consumer-led demand for IT has really changed how organisations think about technology, which then has led up, created new marketplaces, which in turn creates further innovation. So the whole thing coming together, it's more than the sum of its parts, I guess.
Everything is exploded, and now there's a lot more different areas and sub sectors and a lot more to kind of think about.
Yeah, I think for my mind, though, that mobile device, right, the thing that's in everyone's pocket has absolutely changed how we consume and basically the marketplace for IT. So we just now think of everyone has access essentially to information and technology and can use that for a sense of good, but also for commerce-based applications.
Yeah, controlling different apps and different things, and it's changed the way we live, basically.
And rightly or wrongly, that's what's happened.
Yeah, so there's goods and bads. When we talk about living and smart buildings and smart cities and smart homes, what does it mean?
It's a good question. Everything's smart, right, these days, which makes me feel a bit stupid sometimes. But
what's smart now?
I wish I was smart. But yeah, look, I think what we're talking about now is that sort of combination of devices and endpoints that now basically have got computer chips in them and access to data. So they can now essentially make decisions or perform actions based on a series of data. So what does that mean? In simple essence, if an air conditioning system knows that you're about to come home, then it'll turn itself on to a predefined temperature, or it'll turn itself off when people aren't in the room. So it's a very simple use case for it all. But from a citywide point of view, it means we can now aggregate a whole bunch of data and then essentially start tuning the city to create a better experience for its inhabitants, but also cheaper operating costs, better environmental outcomes, and essentially a better place to live for the people who actually are in the city. You think about everything from waste management, traffic, safety, lighting. These things can now be connected in a way that we've never really seen before, which makes the whole city become a much better living environment, as opposed to the old world of, the lights are always on, even if there's no one around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot smarter, as they say.
I know it's not your forte potentially, but do you know which cities are doing really well in the smart cities and kind of really using technology to drive that sort of engagement experience and change and deliver more pleasantful, I guess, experience for its citizens?
Yeah, well, I think Detroit's kind of an interesting use case at the moment where they're really reinventing. They've been trying to reinvent that city for a long time. They're establishing much, sort of more interesting ways for the inhabitants to interact with that city through, I guess, embedded technology and devices and information, providing that sort of information to users. I think Adelaide's actually quite interesting in what they're trying to achieve. They've still got a long way to go there, but just simple things like citywide Wi-Fi for all its inhabitants, and then that sort of leads to additional services. I think ultimately though we've got a long way to go in terms of what a smart city can really achieve. There's a lot of talk about how it can all be integrated, but I think we're still yet to see its sort of final point or its next generation of that.
Yeah. All right, that's a kind of a whole new conversation, I suppose. There's a lot going on there, and I wouldn't want to stir it into that direction. I wanted to kind of talk to you about a little bit more about Woods Bagot. It's a fascinating architecture studio. You guys do incredible projects. There's 17 studios across 6 regions. There's lots going on. You do everything in architecture, interiors, master planning, but you also have a data prediction and human behavior, and a lot of things. And recently, what's I guess most interesting for this region that we are in, at least to my knowledge, you've completed University Melbourne Innovation Precinct building, and that is a nice piece of work and architecture. I only managed to check it out very briefly. Have you worked on that project, or do you? And if not, is there any particular projects that you guys have in a pipeline or have finished that are very interesting to maybe mention and touch base on?
Yeah, there's a few. I think that Melbourne University project, absolutely fantastic outcome in terms of basically the collaboration that went on that project. But in terms of the user experience and the people who actually live within that building, and I think that's something that firms really focusing on is sort of moving away, I guess, more from traditional iconic buildings to really focus on how people interact with those spaces and how they enjoy the experience within that building that reflects sort of what they need to do. So we've had to sort of refocus around the user experience of a building. So as an IT person, hearing sort of user experience used in the built environment is actually quite exciting. So for us, that means we're sort of trying to unlock how the digital world and the physical world start to collide a bit more, and we actually create those services beyond the screen back into the physical space and try to blend the two. Sort of more interestingly though, we're actually using a lot more data now in our urban planning and urban system space to actually try to analyse how we can optimise city spaces more effectively and actually turn them into forces for good, but also unlock value back into the people, those stakeholders who need to do that. Some recent work we've done in LA around how we might convert, say, traditional petrol stations or gas stations, if you're in America, into sort of more urban parks and urban spaces that are more attuned to the electric car movement that's going on. So we're trying to position ourselves as, I guess, thought leaders in that space. And yeah, it's really interesting stuff, right? On how we might help transform that city to reflect the sort of changes in environmental needs, but then use data to really back up our thinking behind that to actually prove out how that value might change the city space in its own right.
Yeah, fascinating. I love all that. Have been sort of studying design, of course, and architecture has been my place to go for ideas, and just incredible sort of innovations that happen there in built environments, and how you guys, especially nowadays with digital layer, as you said, and being able to track how people use particular spaces and use the data to analyze and see and predict what could be best.
And optimize, right? So what the teams are now using, we're using the data to play back into our designs and then optimizing the design. So just instead of just having one sort of drawing in the old days where you kind of guess, this feels about right, we can now optimize thousands of different iterations of those designs to really tune it to how people might interact with those spaces.
And you can do that much faster and better than before. Before, if you kind of do one, two iterations, that's like maximum. This is it. We've done enough. Now you can do like as many as you want.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, it's hard to stop sometimes. Sometimes you've got to put some limitations. Like, 1,000, maybe that's enough.
We've got a few categories that I think are very important to your business that are in sustainability.
Yes.
How much that sort of how much Woods Bagot pays attention to the new built environment, and how do you make those new projects and buildings future proof?
Yeah, there's a few things, and I'm by no means an expert in this, so I should really say, but there's a few things that the firms really got behind sort of by environmental causes of the late recently. And what we're trying to do is ensure that we're not sacrificing environmental concerns for commercial outcomes. In fact, we're trying very much to be at the forefront and leading our various stakeholders through that process. And that's just things making sure that our design environments are environmentally tuned properly. So using data, again, going back to data models to make sure that we're optimizing buildings for really good environmental outcomes. And that's things like just doing simple things like heat analysis and light analysis within those buildings, and using the data to actually predict how the building performs. And this in turn minimises things like air conditioning and power consumption. So we're trying very, very hard to actually minimise our long-term impact of what a building might be for the environment. We're also looking at exploring various materials, of course. Obviously, recycled materials, reducing waste on the construction site wherever we can through intelligent design, and then looking at materials that sort of fit with more into that recycled use, be it through even things like recycled plastics or whatever, but also using wood products in new ways and creating quite interesting outcomes from that as well. So there's a whole range of things that team they're really excited by actually, and it's motivating a lot of our design staff at the moment.
Yeah, it just adds another sort of layer of thinking of how you could save up, be more, I guess, intelligent in design, recycle, and create a different types of buildings that have all these things embedded in that are better for everybody and society and planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and there's two big ways. So, how do you reduce the impact of the actual building of the environment? But then how do you reduce the impact of the running costs of that environment itself? And I think designers, in your audience specifically, George, have a huge impact on that, right? If you design these things right from the get-go, they have a huge impact on how these things are run, and then reduce their impact on the environment.
And these sorts of this is probably a stupid question for me. When do we start thinking about this? So why didn't we start thinking about this before? We weren't sort of really thinking, is this last 20, 30 years sort of thinking, or is it more like last 10 years that kind of came to like, we must do this? Because buildings before weren't really built like this, weren't saving anything. It was abundance of everything. And everyone just like, let's just put everything out there. We don't care. And now it's like, well, let's actually think about what we do and what's our footprint.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I'm not an architect, but from what I've observed, certainly over the last 10 years, is that what I've seen is architects have been at the forefront of environmental movements and have been very passionate about their impact on the earth. However, the stakeholders, the people we're selling our designs to, haven't necessarily bought that or felt that they were commercially viable ideas. So we've always had to tune it back, which is why now that it's becoming far more mainstream, the whole firm feels very energized about, actually, you know what? We've got a whole bunch of ideas. We've been working on this for a long time, and now we're able to sort of make them a reality. So in that respect, I think architects have been thinking about this for a long time. But it's only recently we've been able to actually produce the results here and actually get those designs into the marketplace.
Implemented, and I suppose the cost would be playing a big issue. Why before clients wouldn't want to sort of spend extra money to just, I had a sort of carbon neutral building, or I have this, but now it's like almost the pressure that you kind of do that because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think government legislation is increasing, and it's improving. That's forcing people to do the right things, which makes our life a little bit easier as well. And then I think there's a shared conversation around what does a green building actually look like. Now there are standards that we can comply to, and actually we can all agree on as well, which really helps.
That's great, and it's definitely very, very important. We have about 4 different sustainability categories this year. New ones. Which one do you think will be the winner in terms of how many people submit to it? What do you think? Last year we had the most popular was Be Good Award, but that was the only one that kind of spoke in that sort of social impact, good business. And this year we have Ethical Award. We've got Going Green. We've got Circular Economy sort of award. And then there's a Workplace Culture Award, which could contribute to that sustainability sort of, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought Be Good Award you had last year was great. It was really good to see so many people taking that very seriously, and the responses, the entrance into that were great. I'm hoping you'll see the same thing with that Going Green Award. I think it's a really smart
Hmm.
A really smart idea as well. And I'm just looking at my notes here, but I think rewarding people for taking a risk in this space, and that's what the Pause Awards are always about for me, that they reward people for taking risk and actually trying to do the right thing above just, making money, but actually trying to make a stand for something, or trying to define themselves beyond just a commercial outcome. So I think that, Going Green Award really, I really like that one, George.
But your favorite is Out of Garage.
It is my favourite of all your awards. It's hard to pick a favourite, to be honest with you. But Out of the Garage, I think, is, for my mind, it sort of celebrates people who actually got there. They've done the hard yards in the basement or in the garage or in the bedroom, and actually got out there, and they're an actual grown up business. And I think that's, for people who've done that, it's such a hard work, and it's so much blood and sweat goes into that. So actually turn around and say, hey, congratulations. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think we do that enough of that, actually. I think it's a really important award.
Yeah, it's definitely a mammoth job that, especially if you scaling into different country, don't know anything, or if you're doing it globally from day one, because this market may not sort of be suited for you. It's tremendous sort of effort and energy put into something like that, and over time, keeping this company alive. It's definitely something that should be congratulated. So I am looking. I mean, it's hard to pick which one's the favorite, because they all kind of sound quite good, and I'm very excited about the new sets of categories this year. Finally, you said you're inspired by visionary people, and I wanted to ask: is that why you're still in the architecture studio?
I do like people who stand for something, who just don't to go to work and go home and to live in a rut. People who can create a vision and then articulate that vision in a way that motivates people around them to achieve an outcome. And I think, I've been very fortunate to work with some great design leaders actually over the last 10 years. And these people, what I've recognised is that, they can stand up and actually convince others of their vision, and they can motivate teams around them to achieve pretty interesting, exciting things actually. So I think I do see that in the architecture space. I do see that across the whole world actually, and I think, George, in your sphere of people as well, you've got those visionary people that are sort of creating those spaces. And again, that's why I do like the Pause Awards, because it sort of celebrates people with vision, and it creates a space to actually help people articulate what that vision might be as well. So I think there's an excellent overlap in those spaces.
Yeah, we call them future builders.
Future builders, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. And I think Australia needs more of these people, right? And we need more people to actually explain and describe and motivate what that future might look like. I think it's really important. I mean, now more than ever, I reckon, as we're moving forward out of this weird world, but we need those future creators, if you like.
We do, and it's we are on this mega island that's not so populated. If we were going to be competing and be part of this world, we do need to be in this space and kind of get our creative muscles working and putting things out there, building and compete with international markets.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just competing with them, but also leading those spaces as well. And, you and I have both seen people who are, what doesn't matter really where they come from, who are able to actually get out of their local space and actually create that vision, not just in their own city, but at a global scale. And that's pretty cool.
It is. And probably on that note, we should kind of end. Thank you so much for being part of this year's, again, Pause Awards 2021, and look forward to working with you later in a year when we wrap up the entries. For now, there's early entries still open for one more week, and then all the way until 1st of October. Thanks again, Tom, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to seeing those entrants coming through.
Same. Thanks.